More impressive would be the guy down the two bunks down who had been through 3 murder trials. He killed people for a living. I've shaken the hand of every person who has walked on the moon. My first friend when I moved to Atlanta in 1948 was Arthur. He didn't really have a last name. He was born a slave and still lived in the slave shack in which he was born. The San Francisco Madam was a dear friend of mine. The United Nations was formed. Much of the work was formed in her parlor, in her house of prostitution. Meeting all those people was not accidental. I sought them out like a stalker. Dr. Napoleon Hill, Og Mandino, who saved my life, by the way, literally, Zig Ziglar and Dr. Robert Schuller and Dr. Norman Vincent Peale.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
You had an interesting cellmate when you were in, or at least an interesting name.
I had many. I also met 100 other people that were worse than Charlie Manson. Joe Bonanno of the crime family was right across the aisle from me when I was in the medium security. We're living in a dormitory type situation. Nice guy, not terribly bright. In fact, the joke in the Bonanno family was he wasn't bright enough to be a real made guy. And the reason he was there, the Bonanno family, federal prison, he was there because he was selling asphalt repaving jobs to little old ladies somewhere and then not doing the job or doing it poorly. And I guess, I don't know how it turns federal, but I guess maybe he did it on a federal reservation or something. So he was not exact. And I met his father and his older brother. They were serious players. They came to visit him a couple of times while he and I were together. So yeah, Joe Bonanno was there. More impressive would be the guy down the 2 bunks down who had been through 3 murder trials, got cleared on a single killing, cleared on a double killing, and cleared on a triple killing, but told me he was a professional hitman. So he got off, but that's what his profession was. I spent a lot of time talking to him because I was just fascinated. How did somebody pick up that? It was a line of work. It was like being a plumber. He killed people for a living. Joe Bonanno sold bad driveway jobs.
Less interesting, less lethal. So from a timing standpoint, I'm going to meet you today. I'm excited that today's the day. I jump out of bed. I'm wearing remember to wear my Closers t-shirt for you. I'm happy to visit with you because after our last visit, it really felt related to you and felt like you're a relative now. I don't know how it is on your side, but I want you to know what you are to me. So I was very happy about it. And on Facebook, because every morning I post this week's podcast guest. So I keep promoting that on Facebook and LinkedIn. I get a paid advertisement for the movie about the book Think and Grow Rich. Did you hear or see anything about that?
I saw it flash by the listing.
Well, for those of you that only watch this episode and don't watch part 1 of Ben Gay III, which I encourage, just super interesting guy. That's why I was so excited to come back this time. You worked with, Napoleon Hill was your personal mentor for 2.5 years, right?
Correct. Last 2.5 years of his life.
Watch the first one if you want to hear about that, but there's a little teaser about that. Very interesting.
If I had a lesson to leave with the viewers, if I'm worthy of leaving a lesson, I've led an interesting life. Attitude coach to the astronauts, Apollo 15, 16, 17. I've shaken the hand of every person, 12, who has walked on the moon. My first friend when I moved to Atlanta in 1948 was Arthur. He didn't really have a last name. He was born a slave and still lived in the slave shack in which he was born, behind the Jarvis Mansion, which was right across the street from our house in East Lake, the East Lake area of Atlanta. Sally Stanford, the San Francisco Madam, was a dear friend of mine. Not when she was a madam. I met her when she owned a restaurant in Sausalito, and she's told me fascinating stories. The United Nations was formed. Much of the work was formed in her parlor, in her house of prostitution, whorehouse for those of us who are not well educated. After hours, they would come to Sally's for what Sally had to offer and have a cigar and sip some liquor. And she said, Ben, I watched the United Nations be formed. I saw the negotiations going on and so on. So I think you have a list of some of the people.
Is she still alive?
No.
Oh, okay.
Cute, quick story. I'm sitting with her one day at the end of her bar at the Valhalla, just talking to her, and my wife was with me, and she had gone to the restroom. So we're talking, Sally and I are talking, and this lady comes up and says, Ms. Stanford. And Sally was always had a Gibson girl hairdo and dripping in jewelry. Miss Stanford, I think you know my husband. My husband is so-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, and he's told me he knows you. And Sally said, I'm sorry, I don't know. I've never even heard the name. And, oh, no. And she dropped a few little things that would indicate probably the husband did know her. And finally she gave up and went away. And I said, Sally, I think you know that guy. And she said, Ben, if Gigi came out of the restroom right now and asked me if I knew Ben Gay, I would say no. In her line of work,
it was always no.
Yeah, you admitted to knowing no one, but in that era in San Francisco, she knew everyone. Mayors, governors, supervisors, bankers, and so on. So I would encourage the viewers to sort of make it a goal to meet interesting people. My life is so much richer as a result of knowing, and famous or infamous is a little extra bonus, but many of the most fascinating people I've met, no one's ever heard of but me and their immediate family. But I go out, if I walk into a situation, restaurant, living room, we were at a party last night, and there's somebody there that's unusual, has a little classic story, I'm right over next to him, sitting down, talking to him. And sometimes I'm wrong and you have to go find somebody else. But it's how I met all these, you have a list of famous people, I think I sent you, of people might want to talk about. Meeting all those people was not accidental. I sought them out like a stalker, hired them if necessary. Dr. Napoleon Hill, Og Mandino, who saved my life, by the way, literally, and Zig Ziglar and Dr. Robert Schuller and Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. All of those people I sought out or hired so I could be around them. And it's made my life a whole lot fuller.
Can you tell us how Og Mandino saved your life? Is that worth talking about?
Yeah, well, it was to me.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.